Hello everybody, I hope that you are doing very well today. Today I wanted to talk about some books that I have read so far this year. My Goodreads goal for this year is to read 60 books, which works out to something like 5 books a month. But I just wanted to give a little review about the first 5 books that I read for this year. First book that I read this year was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. The Ocean at the End of the Lane is a growing up story, kind of. It's a very small novel. I really enjoyed it, but I love all of Neil Gaiman's writing. And it's very sort of magical realism, only more magic, less realism, and as in most of his work. It's a really quick read. I think it took me like a day to read it, so if you're a fan of Neil Gaiman, I definitely recommend this particular book. So following The Ocean at the End of the Lane, I read a book called Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, and this one was extremely odd. It's the first book in a trilogy, and it is told in the first person, and it's about a botanist who goes to this restricted area to research with a few other women. Shenanigans ensue, and that's really like the most condensed, concise synopsis that I can give you. It was definitely different. It's the first in a trilogy, as I said, so I am probably going to read the other books, but only because I want to know what goes on. The next book that I read this year was Night Film by Marisha Pessl, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It got kind of mixed reviews on Goodreads and Amazon. I borrowed the e-copy from the library, and I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was really an interesting kind of a novel. It's mixed media, I suppose you could say. Anytime there's a reference to a website or a photo, you actually see the website, you actually see the photo in the novel. For me, that was part of the allure of the book. I thought that it was a really suspenseful read, but I felt kind of let down at the end. Like, I don't want to give anything away, but I'll just let you know that I did feel sort of that the ending fell flat of my expectations of what it was actually going to be. Following Night Film, I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, which is another shorter novel. It was nice to follow a shorter novel because Night Film is a very long novel. It's about 600 pages, and We Have Always Lived in the Castle is another short novel. And it tells the story of 2 sisters who live in a giant house in a village with their uncle. And about 8 years prior to the novel taking place, the entire family, save for the older sister Constance and their uncle Julian, was murdered. They were all poisoned, and Constance took the blame for it. So I think you're supposed to feel that she's only recently gotten out of prison. Constance is very agoraphobic. She doesn't like to leave the property. She works in the garden. She provides for her sister, Mary Cat, and her uncle. And then one day their cousin Charles comes to visit, and that's really the catalyst. That's what sets everything off. And you realize that this is a book told by an unreliable narrator. It is told in the first person, and I feel like most novels told in the first person are an unreliable narrator. But I really liked We Have Always Lived in the Castle. It was spooky. Shirley Jackson wrote The House on Haunted Hill, so she's very good at writing spooky fiction. This one wasn't horror like The House on Haunted Hill is supposed to be, but it's definitely unhomely. When I was studying film, we did a Freudian reading on film, and unheimlich is a word used to describe like unhomely. It leaves you unsettled, and so that's how I felt about We've Always Lived in the Castle. Very well written. I love Shirley Jackson's writing, so I definitely recommend it going forward. And then the final book that I will talk about today is The Red Garden by Alice Hoffman. I have read many of Alice Hoffman's books, not all of them by far, but there are certain themes that I have found in her works, and color would be one and gardens would be another. And you find both of these in The Red Garden, obviously. So obviously in The Red Garden, red plays a huge part. It's a really interesting book, I thought. It really is kind of, I think, a metaphor for kind of like the legends that we set for ourselves. The whole book revolves around a village in Maine called Blackwell. And it kind of talks about, there are stories that go along with the founding legends of the town and the various people who have lived there, and it's really interesting because the book opens with like the Founders Day parade or something like that in the village, and what they celebrate and why. So I find those kind of novels really interesting, where you have this preconceived notion about what things are and how things have been. And it's interesting to read a book that explores those themes, like, well, this is the story that you grew up with, but here's the actuality of the whole situation. So that's what happens in The Red Garden. It's really a collection of stories based around this small town. So I really enjoyed it, but I was really lucky with the first 5 books that I read that the writing was very good. I love everything that Alice Hoffman writes, so I was not disappointed to read The Red Garden. So that is my book reviews 1 for this year, the first 5 books that I read in 2015. I will see you again soon with my book reviews 2, which will cover books 6 through 10. Yes? And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Bye!